those are uncommon, but there's still the commonality with everyone that there is some kind of transformation that comes about in your life. Welcome to the D3 Discipleship Podcast, a podcast about the language and tools that help to create a culture of intentional discipleship in your church. We are excited that you're joining us today and hope that you enjoy what you hear.
Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to the D3 Discipleship Podcast. My name is Ray Peoples, and alongside me is my co-host, Katie Ketzner.
Oh, congratulations, because on the notes, everybody, he put Clevenger, so I was waiting to see if you would mess up.
Oh, my goodness.
We are so excited to be back. It's like we have a fresh new wind.
That's right.
We're so excited to be talking about discipleship, and we're excited to start videoing again.
That's
except
right.
Not this episode.
Not this episode, but soon.
Thought we were. You guys should see me. I'm all dolled up. I had note cards ready. I was I'm going to be proficient in this time.
Yep.
And no camera.
No camera today. Yep. We're in the middle of working on a podcasting area and studio that's going to be awesome coming up in this next season. But today, sorry, Katie.
Because we know what the people really want. Like, I've had a lot of people tell me that they miss it being video.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they like bloopers.
That's right.
So
yeah, they like to make fun of us. That's what it is.
Give the people what they want.
Foundation of it. They want to make fun of us. But yeah.
Well, just a quick reminder, because it's been a little while since we've been doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of took the summer off.
That's right.
But the purpose of this podcast is to coach and equip you to help lead your best in discipleship. And on this new season 3 of our podcast.
That's crazy.
I know.
Right?
It does not feel.
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah. But this season, we're going to have a couple different series, starting with back to school.
Yeah.
Series. We figured, everyone else is going back to school. Why not us?
That's right.
So in this back to school series, we are going back to the basics of D3 for the next couple of weeks.
That's right. And believe it or not, this is episode 47. We have almost 2,000 downloads, which is incredible. Thank you for listening. And it's been a year and a half since we did our very first episode. I think that's right. A year and a half, year. It's been a while. And so I thought, let's go back to some of the basics of D3. We have new leaders. We have new listeners. We have new churches even who are taking part in kind of our D3 discipling network. So let's go back just a little bit.
Yeah. But on top of that, we're going to have more guests, some more great conversations, interviews, and,
Video. That's right. So let's jump into today's episode where we're going to be talking about our equation of discipleship.
Okay, so going back to school and going all the way back to episode 1.
Yes.
This is BK, before Katie.
That's right.
We are going to be talking about our equation of discipleship, which if you don't recall what that equation is, which that's okay.
Yeah.
We're here to remind.
That's right. That's why we're doing it.
It is one common language plus one common method equals uncommon transformation. And so for our new leaders or the new listeners that we have, let's explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so our common language, if we kind of put this equation together, what was happening was we had a lot of different language that was going on in the context of our discipleship and our discipling leaders. And so kind of what stands out for me is when I first stepped into this role as the discipling pastor, I sat down with all of our discipling leaders at our campus at different times. And the funny thing was they were talking about the same tools, but they were using different language for those tools. So an example of that was our learning circle. A couple of them were calling it a Kairos circle, and others were calling it the learning circle. And so it was just like our language was not all on the same page. And so out of that, we kind of decided, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to get everybody back on the same page with our language, what we're calling tools, and how we're doing that. And so what we ask of you as a leader is that you use the language that we're using, right? So that as we've grown to 4 campuses now, and as we continue to grow and different things like that, that we're all speaking the same language. It's super fun when everybody steps in the room together and somebody can say something like the learning circle and everybody knows what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So from a biblical standpoint, we also use the example of the Tower of Babel. So early in Genesis chapter 11, the people are trying to build this tower to the heavens, and they are working in unison using the same language and the same goal that they have. And God didn't like that so much. So he stopped the whole thing by disrupting their language.
Yeah. So, I hear this story and I may look at it a little bit different than some, because what I see is there's strength in the unity of their language. They were all speaking the same language. And so in their disobedience, God knows that. And so then what does he do? He disrupts their language. So if we flip that and we look at it in a different way, their language brought unity. Speaking the same language brought unity. And so for us, that's a success when everybody is speaking the same language. So, I think it's also important for the success of our discipleship. So again, what we ask is you as leaders, you being the leader that is listening, is that you use the language that we have laid out. So for example, the pathway is the D3 pathway. For the tools, we ask that you call them what they are and what we have on our website and in our guidebooks, so that, again, we're all speaking the same language. And I think from there, we're going to find unity, because we already have. We've seen it across our campuses as we've kind of pushed into this of having a common language and giving everybody the resources so that they know that language. We've been able to kind of clarify our communication to, again, teach about a tool that we step into. And so we, even our spring D3 gathering, we did a fun little game, right? Where we ask everybody, we put tools up on the screen or shapes for those tools, and then we ask, what is that tool, right? And so that was a fun little test for everybody to kind of figure out, are we speaking the same language?
Okay, so we talked about the first part of that equation is the common language. So where everyone is saying the same things, we're all on the same page with what we say.
Yep.
So the next part of the equation is that we have a common method. And what we mean by that is that we're all doing discipleship the same way. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so, when we have something as subjective as the term and really the method discipleship, we have to land the plane kind of where we want to be going or where we want to make home. So let's say we brought 5 different listeners into the room, right? And we simply ask, how do you do discipleship, or what is your definition of discipleship? Guess what? We're going to get 5 different answers of what that looks like. And so, because here's the thing, our method of how we disciple someone is going to be reflective of the way that we were discipled. And so typically we're going to just kind of replicate that into the next person. And the funny thing is, the majority of people that you ask that question to were not actually discipled. They were a part of a Bible study, or they were a part of a small group or something like that. But deep, intentional, accountable discipleship, most people have not experienced that. And so we want to give them kind of this common method to be able to walk through that and to do that. So again, we have and find this common method. We've declared a common method. So just like the language, it gets us all kind of on the same page. And so for us at New City Church, and any other church really that's using the D3 pathway, we're saying clearly, this is the way we do discipleship. And I mean, we've had pushback on that. That's a thing, right? People are like, well, I disciple this way. We love you. That's awesome. But this is how we're going to do it at New City Church, right? And how we're going to use the D3 pathway. And so it's been great for us to kind of have this, again, one common method across all of our campuses. And it kind of, again, gets us all on the same page.
And that doesn't mean that, I don't know how to put this. You can still do different activities,
right?
Than any other person.
Yep.
You don't have to do the same thing on the same day. On the second Tuesday of your group, you have to do this.
Yes.
And to teach this tool, you have to do this. We give you ideas on how to teach it, and but if you can find another activity, that does the same thing as the tool,
right?
We're not saying you can't do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that's the unique thing about how we do discipleship is we give you a framework, and then that framework is determined by your group and also the things that are happening in your group, how the Holy Spirit is moving. And so it's we kind of describe the method, right, as this tool belt, or the tools that we have is this tool belt. And so, okay, hey, I've got this particular thing going on in my group. I'm going to pull this tool out to use for that particular week. But at the same time, we want to keep everybody on the same tool belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that doesn't mean that we won't add tools to
Exactly
that tool
right.
belt.
Yeah.
Like we are also growing and discovering. So if we find something that is useful that can be added, I mean, we're going to do that as well.
Exactly right.
We just don't want to have 3 or 4 different pathways at New City.
Correct. Yes. We want to be everybody on the same page, heading in the same direction.
All right, so we have the first part of the equation complete. Common language plus common method. Now we're on to the answer to this equation, which is the uncommon transformation. And this is where it gets more unique or more individualized. This is where the Holy Spirit steps in and does its work in the lives of people. So let's unpack more about what that uncommon transformation means.
Yeah, so I'm gonna flip this for just a minute, okay? And we're gonna look at the definition of common. So common is a shared trait that can happen frequently, or like occurring or done often. So if it's uncommon, then that means it actually isn't shared. But again, it's individualized, such a fancy word. But here's the thing. So what that means for us in discipleship is that the Holy Spirit is doing the work in the life of a person. And so let's say Katie and I, you and I were in a group, which would not be a thing, but we would be in a group, right?
Thanks for adding
but
that in.
the Holy Spirit is going to work in my life differently than he's going to work in yours. Even though we're using the same language, even though we're using the same methods, the Holy Spirit is going to bring you and I more than likely to something that's different in our lives. That's just the uniqueness of each of us as individuals and how the Holy Spirit works in that. And so here in most churches, I think is the tendency. We have an uncommon language, we have uncommon methods, and of course, what you find out is that you're going to have uncommon results because everybody's just doing their own thing. But at the same time, I think we can, and we've seen it happen, so I mean, I know it can happen, is that we can have a common language, we can have a common method, but in that, we're going to see individualized transformation that's happening in the lives of the people that are in your group. I would say the one thing that is common among our people is when they buy into discipleship, they're going to see transformation. Like that happens. That's a thing. When we humble ourselves, humble our hearts to being a part of this process, walking through this process is, again, where we get to see transformation. But again, the results are different for each person.
And although everyone has their own individual results, their personalized results via the Holy Spirit.
That's right.
Those are uncommon, but there's still the commonality with everyone that there is some kind of transformation that comes about in your life.
Yeah. And the fun thing is, like, if somebody in your group is walking through something, there's often a piece that you yourself can see, like a transferable principle to what the Lord's showing them. So we have currently, we just had a learning circle moment this past Sunday night in Mighty Group. But at the same time, it doesn't mean the one person who's walking through that learning circle, it doesn't mean that nobody else in the group goes, oh, well, I've never had that happen. Like, oh yeah, that's going on with me too.
Yeah.
Or I've had that before. And so that's the fun thing is we get to learn from each other in what the Holy Spirit's doing in our lives.
That's cool. So what does this all mean for the leaders that might be listening, going like, okay, that's cool, but where do I fit in this?
Yeah, so for our leaders who are listening, like my answer would be this, okay? Help us to ingrain this equation into the lives of those that you're discipling. Like you need to know this equation as a discipling leader at New City Church or as a part of the D3 pathway. Like use the right language, call the tools what they're supposed to be called, right? Like don't make them up or modify or anything like that, but also use the method that we've given you. Like it has results and it has results that work and have seen transformation. And again, we've seen this common result of transformation. But also in addition to that, like the other thing that kind of helps you as a leader is time. Like the experience that we have with this language and with these methods, we get to save you time in not trying to work through this or struggle through this. But again, we've had a chance to tweak, we've had a chance to modify and really make this thing work in the way of discipleship. And in reality, we're still working to modify it and create it and grow these spiritual disciplines in the lives of our people. One thing that, is coming along in these next couple months, just to give you a little bit of a heads up, Katie, a sneak peek,
I know,
is this idea of evangelism. Like how are we in our discipling pathway coaching people to evangelize? And that's our heartbeat for 2023 as a church at New City is evangelism. And so out of that, if we don't insert that into our discipleship, then we're not coaching and equipping people to be ready in that area. And so that's something that we're going to be kind of adding into our pathway with a new tool and some different things like that. But again, when you stick to the plan, here's the deal. You as a leader get to see God do some awesome things. And so what we're asking you to do is stick to the plan, run the play, and use this as kind of the framework that you get to build within.
So today we went back to the basics, all the way back to our foundational equation that we put in place for you, the leader. This equation is there to remind us that we are on a bigger team than ourselves. Yeah. We're part of something bigger than just us, and that we're not alone in our discipling journey.
Yeah, and again, just to encourage you as a leader, especially the new leader that's just kind of just stepping into this, that run the play, if you will, right? And if you can take what you're taught and run with it, trust the process. It definitely doesn't happen overnight, right? We've talked about that several times on the podcast. Like, this is not an overnight thing. You've got to commit to the time that it's going to take. But again, know this, that several have gone before you, have worked to use this common language and this method, and it works effectively to bring transformation. And here's the thing, as we close out, Katie, like, I'm reminded of being back in band. You know, in junior high, I was a band nerd, all that fun stuff. And junior high, you know, people are like learning how to play music.
Oh, yeah, it's
and
awkward.
The concerts are terrible because nobody knows how to play their music yet. But here's the thing, like, if we don't have the right music in front of us at the concert, it's not going to be any good. If we don't play at the right tempo, if we play the wrong note, all of those things come into play. But here's the thing, when everybody's on the same page, playing the right notes and the right rhythm, man, the music can sound beautiful. And so we want to give you the page, we want to give you the music, and all we're asking you to do is play it as the leader. And so that's what common language and methods do for us as leaders across all of our campuses is, again, it gets us on the same page, it gets us the right page, and we get to start making some beautiful discipling music.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, thanks for joining us today as we went back to school.
Back to the
basics.
That's right.
And we will see you next time on the D3 Discipleship Podcast.
We'll see ya.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that today's information was helpful and useful for your discipling journey. We would like to encourage you to subscribe, review, and share on social media. If you would like more information, check out d3pathway.com.